Today was day 24 of the Karen Read trial. I'm going to give you my daily recap. Today is the first day that the defense gets to call witnesses, and they start off the morning by arguing their motion to dismiss. Once the Commonwealth rests, they can file a motion to dismiss. They do this every time, and 99% of the time, the motion is denied. He starts off by saying that the Commonwealth has not proven that there was a collision, says there's no physical evidence of this, and the witnesses have not given enough information about this. And I'm going to just save a bunch of time because it always gets denied. It did get denied in this case as well. The defense's first witness is Matthew DeSogra, and he's employed by a company called Delta V. He's an accident reconstructionist, and he specializes in accessing vehicle data. He is a licensed engineer. His specialty is in the vehicle data, and he's the director of engineering for EDR services. I forget what the EDR stands for. Electronic data recovery, maybe. He explains that Lexus is a Toyota brand. He goes over some of the basics about like what is infotainment, a lot of things that we have learned earlier from Dr. Burgess and Dr. Welcher. Oh, Dr. Burgess. That man doesn't even have a degree. Shannon Burgess. Alan Jackson asked if he was able to review the work of Shannon Burgess, and he says yes, he is familiar with Shannon, he's familiar with Aperture, he was able to review the work, and he was hired to review the work that Aperture analyzed, and they are the ones who did the download. So he didn't do any of his own downloads on anything, and that becomes like one of the major points for this whole witness. He says that Dr. Welcher's report was based on what Burgess downloaded. And then we start talking about the text stream event or the trigger event. A lot of time was focused on the 11.62.2. This is the backing maneuver. The original analysis placed 11.62.2 ending at 12:31:43 a.m. Welcher reported that the trigger began at 12:31:38, which is 5 seconds earlier. So triggers are a point in time. They're not a time span, he says. The trigger will record for 5 seconds, but it's basically just saying, hey, something is happening, and it clips it right there, and then it does record. There was a lock event on John O'Keefe's phone at 12:32:09. So based on this, he's saying that the trigger began and then John O'Keefe's phone locked like 20 to 30 seconds later. It could be larger than 5 seconds, so it was actually 31 seconds from the trigger to the phone lock, and he says correct. Did you come to opinion based on your engineering expertise, blah, blah, blah? He says yes. What is it? He says that the phone lock event always occurs after the end of the event, based on Shannon Burgess's 2025 report. And this is a big deal too. So Shannon Burgess produced the January report, and then he also produced another report that came out mid-trial in May. So then this witness had to go in and he looked through everything, and he did make updates to his presentation based on the updates from the Commonwealth's witnesses. Here's our guy. This is Matthew DeSogra. He's the person that's on the stand. I should have showed you the screenshot of him a lot earlier. But look at him. Like, he was very likable on the stand. I think that him and Jackson, their questioning flowed really well. I think the jury maybe was just like indifferent about him. Like, he's not like super likable or unlikable until we got to Brennan, which I'll get to. DeSogra made his own PowerPoint presentation based on all of the data from Welcher and Burgess's reports. He's used everything from Dr. Welcher and Shannon Burgess's reports. So this is a screenshot from Aperture. He has just like made a box and put after, and he's saying that it was 26 seconds after this text stream event occurred. So a lot of the slides are just like copy paste of what was shown from the Commonwealth witness, and he's just made like some updates on them. We don't see the whole presentation, but that's the gist of what we can see. There's a ton of questioning about the 3-second time frame difference in turning on the vehicle once you hit the push to start and the infotainment center turning on. that's a 3-second window, and he says he can agree that it's the same for all Lexus vehicles, but they only tested one exemplar vehicle. So he can agree on that, but they could have tested more vehicles or got more data, and they didn't. We also learned that Karen Read had her vehicle for 8 months. I said that, I think, on an earlier day. And there were 19 trigger events. And we learned that collision was not indicated to be any of those trigger events. And collision is actually not one of the events that would record. It's something that like leads up to the collision or like is a part of the collision, like the airbag deployed. That would be a tech stream event. And then Jackson is going to be done with his direct questioning. They take their morning recess, and the cross-exam is done by Hank Brennan. Brennan starts off by asking if he thinks, or if he's trying to offer an opinion that Karen Read's Lexus ever hit John O'Keefe. And he said he's not, he can't, because none of the prior events that he studied triggered a collision. We have heard multiple times that collision is not one of the tech stream triggers. A vehicle and pedestrian collision would not trigger an EDR event. The Commonwealth witness has said this too. Brennan tries to get him to say that the accelerator at a certain percentage will trigger an event, and he can't agree. He doesn't know that specific number, but I think the Commonwealth's expert had said it was something. So he says he wants to know if he's actor certified. He's not certified in cell phones either. He submitted his report on May 25th. And so Brennan asks, you updated your PowerPoint? He says, yes. If you have new data, you need to update it. And he says, yes, that's correct. And it was a big deal that Shannon Burgess, in the middle of his trial, updated his stuff. So Brennan is trying to play around and make it a big deal that he also updated his. He says that he noticed right away that the measurements of the megabits versus megabytes in Burgess' report were incorrect. He's the one that pointed that out. And then they go to lunch. When they come back, they're looking at the presentation some more, and they start going over Karen Read's phone calls. We'll link to the infotainment center, and that's what's on this slide. It says infotainment call stamps, and it says John O'Keefe call stamps. So we know that these are two iPhone things, but this number is coming from the infotainment, and this is coming from John's cell phone data. He spends so much time on this. This man is not a phone expert. He wants to know why the infotainment center is only recording one call, even though there were two calls right here. And it's because the infotainment only records one when they're like super close in time, like that. But he is not the expert in this. And Brennan, when I'm telling you, he spends like an hour on this, it's absurd. And everything he points to, he's like, this whole chart comes from the Commonwealth's witnesses. This comes from Dr. Welcher and Shannon Burgess. He just put the green box around it. Jackson does some redirect, and he says, you've never lied about holding a bachelor's degree. You've never lied about holding a master's degree. He says, correct. That's throwing shade at Shannon Burgess. We also learned that going into January 30th, so on January 29th into January 30th, there were other tech stream events triggered. Jackson said, was it 11? And DeSogra says possibly. He refreshes his memory with the list, and he doesn't count them all, but he says there are a lot. So while the vehicle is in custody, there are 11 events, and there were 18 or 19 total on her vehicle the whole time that she owned it for that 8-month window. Jackson highlights that if any discrepancy was made on these slides, it's based on the discrepancy by Mr. Burgess. There's an objection, but I think the point was made. He's done. Brennan has a few more questions. He's so far away from the microphone that I couldn't hear him for any of it, though. He is excused, and then the next witness comes up. He is here without the presence of the jury. The jury left at 3:30 today. His name is Jonathan Diamandis, and they're doing a voir dire. Essentially, the defense is going to bring in Michael Proctor's text messages through this man. And I'm not a fan, honestly. Call Michael Proctor. They question him just to kind of lay the foundation for it. He's all done. Yannetti argues that they want to bring these in. Brennan says if they try to bring them in, they need to call Proctor. And Yannetti says it's our choice to authenticate these texts with the witness that they choose. It's unheard of to not call the lead investigator in the case, and Bev will rule on this on Monday.